If we are searching for a word as the key of entry into our time, I think that this word is complexity.
Americans always talk about military and how we need to bomb. I didn't hear one word today about bombing.
Terrorism could not live without funding.
Conflicts, crises in traditional sense, are now connected with terrorism, money laundering, illegal trafficking, attempt to spread arms or mass destruction, the search for energy, land and water. Phenomena that have more often than not a transnational aspect, as we are going to see in the discussion that will take place today.
We need to know where the radicalization process comes from. What are the main drivers? Who is going where for what?
And some of them, like the Islamic State, the IS, ISIS, ISIL, however you want to call them, have explicitly declared war on our societies and our norms.
It is a global warfare with the involvement of almost all major countries.
It is very difficult to understand what relates to terrorism, what relates to organized crime, what is maybe even legitimate.
In 2012, one of my colleagues noticed that young British Muslims were going to Syria then in order to join militant groups. He also noticed that they continued to be active on social media. They maintained their Facebook profiles, their Twitter profiles. It became relatively easy to follow them, which is what we did.
I mean, what's happening is that IS is trying to warn fighters and members against opening social media accounts.
A lot of people who had been involved in petty crime, who had been involved in small forms of drug dealing, credit card fraud, and other kinds of crime,
they know how to raise money.
And we have not talked about money laundering into real estate as a storage place for this. We have had dead Yemenis buying real estate in Georgetown. I can give numerous examples that it is not just crony capitalism, it's not just oligarchs, but we have terrorist money laundering into real estate. Have you found any documents or have they come to you concerning finance?
Yes, I do have financial documents from IS, a budget from eastern Syria from 1 month between December 2014 and January of 2015. And it gives an income of around $8.5 million in 1 month and expenditures of around $5.5 million or $5 million. So that turns a profit of around at least $3 million.
Well, I haven't got any email death threats so far or on direct message on Twitter, but if I do, then yeah, this is a huge problem, of course. Luckily, though, they can't get to me easily.
So I'm interested in the cooperation between IS with organized crime.
But one example I think is good is cigarettes, which can come into Syria via Turkey, both legally and illegally, and then be smuggled into IS territory, for example, in oil trucks. It's normally for around twice the price.
Cigarettes, big industry around the world, an industry which organised crime and other forms of criminality find themselves heavily involved with.
If you're actually cracking down on organised crime, you're also likely to hit the funding of terrorism.
Dass sogar eine kriminelle Organisation von einer anderen kriminellen Organisation, die sich auf Wirtschaftskriminalität, illegalen Handel und so weiter stützt, dass die sagen, ja, ihr könnt in unserem Gebiet agieren, wenn ihr dafür Abgaben zahlt.
There are footprints that different crimes give, which is where you need a combination of researchers working with investigators to help determine this, that you can begin to then see patterns in financial transactions. But until you understand how the crime works, you're not going to be able to find those.
In Africa today, the same roads are used by terrorists, migrants, drug, cigarette, and in all the gray areas controlled by terrorism, they are paid by taxes or by other systems, and so they make profit on it. The money used by terrorism is due of all trafficking and smuggling.
Of course, the absence of the central government, the central power. You know, what happened in Iraq, what happened in Libya by United States, by NATO, that was a huge mistake, and now we are paying the price for that.
We can play a role, and we have started to play a role.
There are some areas that you can point to where public-private partnership is working. There are examples in the UK that I'm very familiar with, but clearly more can be done.
This is why I think that the concepts of simple solutions and talking in platitudes and generalities just doesn't help.
But you need more than public-private partnerships. You need partnerships with multinational organizations, with NGOs, and that will help you understand the footprint of this illicit trade.
If the situation is so unstable financially, will this increase in the future?
It's reaction and never action, and we are always following what the event produce.
I think it's one of the biggest phenomena of our time. I think it will be with us for a generation and will pose an enormous challenge, not only to countries in the Middle East, but also to Western societies.
All these things are producing a lot of confusion, no policies, and opportunities, including a lot of corruption.
The San Bernardino attack in California was funded through a fraudulent bank loan. I mean, the person applied for the bank loan, but falsified the motive for which he was obtaining this bank loan.
My provocative statement about what the hell have we been doing for the last 15 years. I guess my point is that we treat terrorist financing as a static risk. We don't respect the fact that it morphs according to the changing geopolitical winds. And that's where the mistake has come. And we haven't really thought properly about terrorist financing as an individual discipline.
The new attacks now are focused on soft target. And maybe that's a very important point also.
IS is, in terms of its military capacity, still very weak. Also shows, if you look at the January 14th attacks, 2 pistols, couple of homemade bombs, 2 homemade suicide belts, that was it.
The problem is not to get big results. The problem is to put the fear, to implement the fear in the population.
The only thing that would really cause a collapse of IS would be the stopping cash flow between IS and the outside world, and that's very difficult to do.
So the question is blocking a stream actually the right thing to do, or should one try and keep finance in the channels that we know and that we can monitor, and then use the intelligence that comes from monitoring those flows to identify the bad guys, to identify the networks that support the bad guys.
If I was a criminal, I was very happy that there will be a lot of walls, a lot of fragmentation. The European countries don't agree on any kind of policy, and they don't agree. On the end, I would find a lot of opportunities.
In our political culture, it is very short-sighted. People think from Tuesday to Thursday. And we need people who think to the next Monday, or maybe even to the years ahead. Strategic thinking, and that is very rare.
And this form of political paralysis is new. We didn't have this in the past. And this is also something which indicates that we have a fundamentally new situation.
The tensions are of multiple root. We have a strategic, military, political tension, but we also witness some tensions along religious lines.
A little bit, there are a few good news. The awareness of security policy needs in our societies has increased significantly over the last 1 or 2 years. The resilience of our societies has increased significantly.
We have come to the end of that panel. Thank you very much. I found it hugely interesting and discomforting, because my feeling is that the task is getting larger the longer you look at it, whereas the political will and resources needed to solve it internationally are not yet developed.